So for me, everything is rupee. Next notification is borrowing and lending in rupees. So how does vis-a-vis borrower the situation change? The situation changes that in case of borrowing in foreign currency, it is my obligation on the maturity date to repay that foreign currency. So everything gets converted into INR, but on the maturity date it becomes obligation of the borrower to go to bank and say that give me foreign exchange, this is what my transaction is, this is my external commercial borrowing which I have raised and I have to make repayment. So therefore Indian party or Indian resident is bearing exchange risk when it is borrowing in foreign currency. And it is in borrowing in rupee, which would be only permissible from non-resident Indian or person of Indian origin. It is the non-resident which bears the exchange risk, if at all. When he remits, say for example, $1 lakh, so he is giving a loan of 60 lakh rupees to Indian borrower, Indian partnership firm. On the maturity date, in case it is a borrowing in rupee, Indian partnership firm will repay that 60 lakhs and not $1 lakh. It will pay 60 lakhs, it will get credited to his non-resident ordinary account. From NRO account, if that lender wants to repatriate subject to again remittance asset rules, it can repatriate. But the point which you have to understand is that if it is a borrowing in foreign currency, it is the Indian resident who is taking obligation or who is taking the risk of foreign exchange fluctuation. Then you have notification 5, which is deposits between person resident in India and outside India, which is on NRE and NRO and all that. Then export and import of holding of currency or currency notes. You have even guidance available on that, how much you can export. What you mean by export is that you are not exporting Indian rupee. But if I am carrying in my pocket and I am leaving India and even I am going on a pleasure trip, it is export. Export definition under FEMA, that is under section 2 of FEMA, is not export. What we understand is export by way of sale. Export means something taking outside India. So for example, if L&T has got a project in Dubai to construct a road and it finds that some of the equipment needs to be taken to that site, project site, probably it is an export of equipment, even though it is not selling. It is not selling, but goods are leaving Indian territory. And similarly it is the case for imports. So one will have to examine custom law in case of imports of machinery, even if it is not import by way of purchase, but that is import into India and export into India. So one will have to look at this export and import in this perspective. So when you say export and import of currency means how much you can carry. So that is the guidance available. Then you have transfer of immovable property outside India other than a lease not exceeding 5 years by a person resident in India. Whether an Indian resident can acquire property overseas. If you want, there is a capital account transaction and you have notification 7. And it says that if you are entering into a lease transaction, then it is regarded as a not, if lease up to 5 years is not acquisition of immovable property. Then giving a guarantee, as I told you, you are creating a contingent liability, therefore it is a capital account transaction, you have notification 8. You have insurance as 12, remittance of assets. We will touch upon this remittance of assets scheme later on, but the point is that this is remittance of asset is available to non-resident Indian and person of Indian origin, and to some extent those who are working in Indian embassies. So that is remittance of asset rules are available, notification is available, how much they can take out of it. Then your transfer or issue of any foreign security. Now this is notification 120. You will find that so far we were in sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and suddenly it is 120. Originally this notification was 1919, but it went into so much change that now it is replaced with notification 120. Then you have transfer or issue of any security by a person resident outside India. It is very vaguely worded, but the notification 20 is something about inbound investment, foreign direct investment, portfolio investment, all this guidance on this would be available in notification 20. Then acquisition or transfer of immovable property outside India, in India, is notification 21. So it talks about who can acquire property in India. Then establishment in India of branch or other place of business. Non-resident wants to establish branch in India, you have notification for that, which is 22.
What is the difference between notification
2 and 2 and? You are issuing a foreign security. The company 2 and 20 or 2 and?
2 and 20.
20 is about inbound investment. So for example, when Honda and Gilobit together, Honda made investment in India, so it's a foreign direct investment. Or Morgan Stanley is investing on portfolio investment in Indian stock market. It will be governed. It is a kind of investment in Indian companies. Here is a case notification 2 when you are getting the securities are offered which are not of Indian companies. So the foreigner is coming to India, it is establishing a branch in India, it is marketing security of foreign companies. IPO of Apple. Then investment in firm or proprietary concern, you have notification 24. And as I mentioned, this is notification 1 which relates to permissible capital account transaction. This is the Bible or preamble of the FEMA which gives the list of permissible capital account transaction. And there are two schedules, transaction 1 specified in schedule 1 and 2, which schedule 1 is for person resident in India and schedule 2 is of person resident outside India. Now this schedule notification 1, otherwise it's a, as I told you, it carries a genesis of capital account convertibility, but otherwise the transaction listed in schedule 1 and schedule 2, most of the notification or rather all the notifications are already captured in what I narrated now, what we went to the list of 1 to 24 and 120 all captured there. Still just run through this schedule 1, and this interesting observation 1 just I want to make is that, for example, classes of capital account transaction of person resident in India. So what Indian resident can carry out? And when you say that I am doing liberalized remittance scheme I am utilizing for $75,000 now, I can carry out these transactions or current account transactions. So this is the list which allows you to carry that. So it's investment by person resident in India in foreign securities. So under $75,000 scheme I can invest in foreign securities. It is unlisted, listed, whatever. Then foreign currency loan raised in India and abroad by person resident in India. So I can create a loan. So this is how it will go, except that now look at this schedule 2. Classes of capital account transaction of person resident outside India. It says investment in India by a person resident outside India, that is to say, issue of security by a body corporate or an entity in India and investment therein by a person resident outside India. So this is what notification 20 or inbound investment. It says issue of security. So Indian company is issuing a security and investment therein by a person resident outside India. And the next point, Roman 2. Investment by way of contribution by a person resident outside India to the capital of a firm or a proprietorship concern or an association of persons in India. So a non-resident can invest. There is a possibility of non-resident investing in a partnership firm or proprietary concern. But if you go to person resident in India, same item. A. Investment by a person resident in India in foreign securities. Making investment overseas in a partnership firm is not a permissible capital account transaction. But there could be different views that there are cases also, I am not aware, but Indians have become partner in limited liability partnership. But the point is that this is not permissible. So in case you want to become partner, it is better that we seek RBI approval. This is a cardinal principle. If you find that something is not clear, go to RBI, seek approval. Now what is the rationale? You are allowing non-resident to become partner in partnership firm. India says we don't mind. If you want to create unlimited liability under Indian partnership in 1972, you are welcome. But we don't want Indians to go there. Under the domestic law of that country, you create unlimited liability as a partner. So maybe limited liability partnership would be a better case. But unlimited partnership, I am pretty sure that the bank will not. Again, under Income Tax Act, there could be issue. If I become partner in overseas firm, there could be issue of control and management, because unlike Section 6, which deals with companies, which says that the entire control should be in India. In case of partnership, it says even part control in India would make partnership firm resident. Right? Capital account transactions which are prohibited. Now this notification 1 prescribes certain transactions which are prohibited, which are void ab initio. And come what may, this has not undergone change in the last 13-14 years. Come what may, whatever be the pressure. It says we will not allow Reserve Bank, FEMA will never be liberalized. It says no person resident outside India shall make investment in India in any form, in any company or partnership firm or proprietary concern or any entity, whether incorporated or not, which is engaged or proposes to engage in the business of chit fund, nidhi, in agriculture or plantation activity, or in real estate business, or construction of farmhouses, or in trading in transferable development rights. The caveat is that real estate business is also defined, which says that real estate business shall not include development of township, construction of residential or commercial premises, roads. Any investment coming into India, be it borrowing in rupee, borrowing in foreign currency, inbound investment by way of equity contribution, these are negative list. Even if you go to foreign direct investment policy, some of you might have gone there, and FDI policy list, there could be some kind of overlapping, but it says this is not permissible. Nobody can invest in Sahara. If it is a chit fund and Nidhi company, you cannot. It is agriculture and plantation strictly prohibited. You cannot carry out, no foreigner can carry out agriculture or plantation activity. In real estate business, what they say is trading is not allowed. So you can't trade in real estate. You can't buy 50 offices in one building and sell it within 6 months. You can't do that. And that's where Southeast Asian and India differ. We never allowed these foreigners to invest in real estate, to trade in real estate. The stock market would have seen the movement of 1,000 points on Sensex up and down. When they start, there's an exodus of funds, they start selling, there could be impact. But you won't find that happening in real estate, like what happened in Dubai in 2008. The people started just moving, living, they paid some token money, 10% down payment to buy a big villa, and they find that suddenly prices started decreasing. Their economy. Why this is not happening in India? Because of this. You can't trade and invest in real estate. Otherwise, there will be a speculative activity. If it starts happening in real estate, it will create a kind of bubble, asset bubble. There will be funds which will be coming, and one doesn't know at one part of time it will go. Even if you go to banking regulation, Department of Banking, which Reserve Bank also governs, you will find that under even when you are doing a branch audit or statutory audit, there are certain sectors which Reserve Bank wants to monitor. When a loan is given by a particular branch or particular bank, even at HO level, they want to monitor what is the exposure to real estate sector. And there's an obligation on auditor to report separately how much it is lent to real estate sector or construction sector. Yeah.
In agriculture and plantation activity, I understand horticulture and floriculture.
Yeah, horticulture and floriculture also.
They would essentially mean the same thing. So what would be the rationale behind that?
Next, so if they find that basically horticulture and floriculture is something like value-added thing. So if you look at, they will not allow you to produce. You get into grains production or rice and wheat and all that. They will not allow. This is something where technology is involved. You are generating employment. You are creating value addition, and India is lacking on technology. So that's the reason they have allowed horticulture and floriculture. That is. Now this 6.4 and 6.5 are akin to section 10 of the income tax act, which gives you the list of exempt income. 6.4 and 6.5 say that FEMA will not apply to these transactions. Even though it could be capital account transaction, even though it will not. Now what are the situation? It says 6.4. A person resident in India may hold, own, transfer or invest in foreign security, foreign currency, foreign security or any immovable property situated outside India if such currency, security or property was acquired, held or owned by such person when he was resident outside India or inherited from a person who was resident outside. So while I was there, I was having my job or employment or my business, and out of those earnings I have created certain assets. It says it will not apply to those assets or security, those currency. And even if I transfer that, I will not be regulated by notification which regulates otherwise such transactions which are on capital. And 6.5 is the reverse case. A personal resident outside India hold, own, transfer or invest in Indian currency security, exactly opposite. So basically it tries to say that assets which are created in India while you were resident of India and you keep continuing investment, and when you become non-resident Indian, you will not be abide by this law. But there are some lacuna and there are some conflict. For example, I'm a resident today. I've incorporated a company which is an IT company, okay, and then I find that US is the best place for IT company to grow, right? And therefore I moved to US. But I continue to be the shareholder of the company. I resign from directorship and there is another person who has joined it. Now, later on, there is an acquisition. Even I have floated a US company, and I am selling of the US venture also, and along with that, even I am asked to sell Indian venture. And therefore, the buyer is non-resident, right? The shares which are held in Indian company, buyer is non-resident. Now, strictly speaking, if you go by 6.5, it says that it should not apply. But since buyer is non-resident, FEMA comes into play. But assume for a while that there is a resident buyer. Okay, the Indian company is being acquired by a resident. Now, as on date, the status of the seller is non-resident Indian. But if you look at 6.5, it says you should be allowed to even transfer. Even you should be allowed to, the FEMA will not apply to such type of assets which are owned by you when you were resident in India. You created those assets when you were resident in India. But out of abundant precaution, otherwise also people say that if the resident is buying and the person is a non-resident Indian, it is better to abide by the FEMA compliances. Now there is an amendment which has been introduced by January 9, 2014 circular, which is on 6.4, which typically lists out the type of transaction. This is a more clarificatory nature to say that what type of transactions can be carried out under 6.4. Okay, it is, if you see foreign currency account opened and maintained by such person when he was resident outside India, so you can continue with that. There is no need to bring such foreign exchange in India. As I told you, foreign exchange is a property of India. So if I become resident, I should have brought it in India. But it says no, because of 6.4. I can continue to keep my accounts there. Income earned through employment or business vocation outside India, while I was outside India, I can keep that funds there, I can invest there. So this is 6.4, there's a clarification, but on 6.5 there's no clarification. The circular, one would have expected that there's even clarification on section 6.5, unfortunately it is not. Now we touched upon those capital account transaction and the notification, guarantees, loans, rupees, capital account investment in India, outside India, everything. Now there are other notifications. Out of that 25 notification, which were there 15 on capital, 9 on other and 1 on export. These are the 9 notifications which says that realization, repatriation and surrender of foreign exchange. There is a guidance available on realization, repatriation and surrender. Repatriation in India is also a term which is defined in FEMA. So if there is a foreign exchange due to you, when you will realize, how you will realize. So realization, repatriation and surrender of foreign exchange. Surrender would mean that I have gone on, say for example, travel quota on personal visit, and I am allowed to say $5,000 or $10,000, whatever the limit. And when I come back, I am left with some money, and I want to surrender, so you can just surrender. Right? You have foreign currency accounts by person resident in India. Foreign currency accounts by person resident in India. The thing we talk about EFC, which is a foreign currency account. So there is a guidance available. If you want to open a foreign currency account either in India or outside India, there is a notification. Then possession and retention of foreign currency. How much you can possess, how much coins you can possess, how much currency notes you can possess, or how much you can retain. Manner of receipt and payment. Inclusion of debit card, and this is notification 15. Is generally notification 15, 16, 17 and 18 are, you will find that one is not very much tuned or very much aware about this notification. These are very typical notification, not even under section 47 or section 6 of capital or other notification. It says inclusion of debit cards, ATM cards and such other instrument in the definition of currency. Now currency is defined, foreign currency is defined, so they have amended and they have just said that, clarified that this will be regarded as a currency. Then your receipt from and payment to non-resident in India. Notification number 16, receipt from and payment to non-resident in India. We'll touch upon this in bit detail. The dealings with Nepal and Bhutan. There is notification 17, which is a notification which gives guidance about dealing with Nepal and Bhutan. As you would know that when you go there, you can deal in rupee. Even in Nepalese rupee can exchange it. You did not even deal in foreign currency. So there is a notification on that. Then post office has been declared as authorized person and you have notification for that. Foreign exchange derivative contracts, you have notification 14. Then you have export of goods and services. There is no separate notification on import of goods and services. But on export of goods and services, you have a notification which is notification 23. Though there is a master circular on import of goods and services, but there is no notification. And then withdrawal of journal permission to overseas corporate body. These are specifically and intentionally included because this is the notification, which is 101. Which is, you will find that all these earlier notifications were issued at the time of introduction of FEMA, but this is the notification which was introduced in 2003, which says withdrawal of general permission to overseas corporate body. Now, many of you would be aware that non-resident Indians, because they are the sons of our soil, and even overseas corporate body, as the term goes, OCB. OCB was a concept which was prevalent in 2003. It said that if non-resident Indians are having interest in a foreign company to the extent of 60% or more, they would be given some favorable treatment while making investments in India. As on date also, there are few sectors, and there is a separate schedule available under foreign direct investment scheme which says that NRIs are given special treatment or favorable treatment. Similarly, OCB was a category of entity which was given liberalized treatment for investments in India. But in 2003, because of this Ketan Parekh scam, which Ketan Parekh is known that he has used such kind of OCBs, and there were series and structures of OCBs through which funds were coming to India, and it was not becoming visible for Reserve Bank of India to penetrate and find out which is the ultimate or proper investor, who is the real investor. So in 2003, they came out with a notification to say that we are deregulating OCB. The point which is that one has to still bear in mind is that sometimes you will find that you come across an entity which is in Mauritius. Generally, you will find that FDI in India is rooted to Mauritius. One has to always keep a check that is it not an erstwhile OCB? There are many cases which you have come across where the investor is an OCB, they have not complied with the compliances which were due, and the Reserve Bank is maintaining a separate list, negative list, and therefore if investment is or further investment is coming from such OCB, one would let them into. Always just keep a check on that. Now we touch upon section 3 of FEMA, which is a very important section. Section 2 is definition, section 4 is acquiring immovable property, 6 is on capital account transaction. Now section 3, which is section 3 says dealing in foreign exchange. Now there are 3 has got a subsection A, B, C and D. There are 3A. It says 3A, deal in or transfer of any foreign exchange or foreign security to any person not being an authorized person. This is what I am trying to say. Foreign exchange is the property of authorized person, government of India. You cannot deal. So it says save as otherwise provided. Save as otherwise provided, no person shall deal in or transfer any foreign exchange or any foreign security to any person not being an authorized person. So if export payment is due to me, it has to come through proper banking channel, it has to be received through authorized person. Now deal in is a very wide term, and it was corresponding section under FERA. There was a section called 8.1. And that's why they say this contravention, if you are contravening section 3A, there's a process available as compounding. As chairman mentioned, there is a separate session we have identified for compounding of contravention. But if you are contravening section 3A, this contravention cannot be compounded by Reserve Bank of India. It has to be compulsorily go to Directorate of Enforcement. It's a very, very serious violation. It's all nothing but hawala. There's some payment which is due to me, and I am receiving not through authorized person. I am making some remittance overseas which is not through authorized. Section 3A contravention, it will not be compounded by Reserve Bank of India. Matter will be referred to Director of Enforcement. 3B, no person shall make any payment to or for the credit of any person resident outside India in any manner. Intention is to prohibit direct and indirect payment to non-resident. Now this is a very, very draconian section, or if you say, no person shall make any payment to or for the credit of any person resident outside India. And this is similar to FERA. And as Asmin Bhai mentioned, there were perceived fear because of, for example, a friend is coming, a non-resident Indian or even a non-resident foreigner. The Firangi is coming and he's my friend and I want to give him a treat, I want to do favor. If he falls sick, I'm bringing him to hospitals or paying his medical bills. Nothing was permissible because it says, make any payment to or for the creditor. And representations were made by Chamber and Bombay Charitable Society that this is something unintentional. Every now and then, again like FERA, every Indian citizen would be violated. Whatever courtesy you are offering to your non-resident friends was resulting into violation. They listened to this representation and we have notification 237 which came, which says that a resident individual may make gift or grant loan to an NRI who is a close relative in rupee by way of cross check or electronic transfer to NRO. So basically they are trying to say that in case, now this was such a thing that I can't even make payment to my, if I want to, a father wants to make a gift. In NR account it was not permissible. But if he wants to remit overseas, it was permissible. The gift is a current account transaction. Current account transaction otherwise freely permissible. And you are remitting overseas, current account rule would say, subject to some limit. It is permissible. But in India, if I want to make gift, it was not permissible. 3B was creating a bottleneck. And therefore, there is an amendment. It says now that up to liberalized remittance scheme limit, you can every year give to NRO. Then 3C, we have receive otherwise than through an AD any payment by order or on behalf of non-resident anywhere. So I am not, whatever the foreign exchange which is due to me, I am not receiving through authorized, I am not receiving the proper banking channel. It says that explanation is given to this section where a resident receives any payment without corresponding inward remittance. It is clearly written. You are receiving payment that is actually an unofficial kind of money without corresponding inward remittance. So India is deprived of precious foundation. And 3D, enter into any financial transaction in India as consideration for or in association with acquisition or creation or transfer of a right to acquire any asset outside India by any person. So I am entering into transaction in India, but intention is to acquire asset overseas. So I am keeping in dark the regulator. What is it? Not dealing with. I don't know.
Friends, we will break for tea for 15 minutes.
We assemble in 15 minutes.